Okay, welcome into BuffaloPlus.com, our YouTube page, Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes. I am Jenna Cottrell. We are getting you ready for the Bills' AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. And some news to break down today now. Some interesting stuff because Patrick Mahomes did practice today, but Mike, there he is out there, some hardcore stretching, as you can tell. He's really getting into that right there. But Dan, why don't you explain, because there was some controversy is too strong of a word, but there was some talk today because it was listed that Patrick Mahomes was a full participant in practice, and then things kind of got walked back.
Yeah, Andy Reid came out and said that he participated in everything in practice today and that everybody practiced in some form. And then when the injury report came out, they had him listed as a full participant. The problem was they participated in a walkthrough, which is not a real practice. So the injury report is based off your team was doing a full practice. I know this sounds crazy. Stay with me. But a quarterback, most of their non-contact drills throughout the week, they go around these little bags, they throw into hoops on the side, all of those things. Patrick Mahomes participated in the walkthrough fully, but if it was a practice where there would have been contact, he would have been limited. So the Chiefs came out and said later on in the day, oh, Patrick Mahomes was limited today because in the concussion protocol, you can participate in non-contact drills, and obviously, sorry about that, non-contact drills. So Patrick Mahomes can practice all week in non-contact drills. He's a quarterback. It's not like he's slamming in other linemen working on pass blocking schemes. He's sitting there throwing a football and jogging around the field. It's the same thing that Josh Allen does, but it is a little different. So,
yeah, and it's also different because I think they're still keeping his cardio work limited because they're testing him, and he does have that process to still go through. So how much they're going to have him do, he would have done this amount no matter what the rest of the team was doing today.
Right.
I think is basically it, right? They were going to keep him. They needed to keep him that way.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. He's playing in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
I mean, Poyer said it today. Trey White said it today. They are preparing for Mahomes. I think they could adjust to Chad Henne if they had to.
Yeah.
But they're preparing for him.
I mean, it makes sense, too, considering we see Mahomes out there practicing. But I think, he was diagnosed with a concussion at the game. Then it was kind of walked back. And then it was said, fastest concussion protocol ever. Yeah, but I've heard some talk that it wasn't technically a concussion. So it's hard to say, but the fact that he's practicing, the fact that it seems like he's going to be practicing all week, like Trey White and Jordan Poyer said, they're expecting him to play. And how much do you think that kind of does take off in terms of you're not game planning for two quarterbacks? You all but 100% know, Mike, it's going to be him.
And let's be honest, they have respect for Chad Henne. The guy's been around the league. He can make some plays, but you're really not going to spend a lot of time because basically Henne will try to run that offense just like a human being, not like Mahomes. So they would be fine dealing with Chad Henne if they have to adjust to it. Hey, he's got a foot injury. He had a concussion. There's also the very real possibility that he could get knocked out of the game. I mean, it can happen to any quarterback. Mm-hmm. So they're aware of what Henne has done. These coaches have gone against Chad Henne. He's been around the league for a while. But yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It's not like it's going to be some surprise if Mahomes walks out on the field on Sunday. He's going to play. He should play. And Dan, you've talked about it before. For Bills fans who think this is a little like, how are they getting him back so fast? I mean, the Bills did it last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh Allen played after having a concussion in the second half in week 4 against New England. But what it is different is that Mahomes, and I tweeted out yesterday, just the fact of how Mahomes' week will be different. He may be able to partake in all these practices, but he's also passing tests on the side. He's also seeing medical doctors on the side. He's missing meetings. He's doing a lot of other things too, to go along with everything else that he's going on to it. So in a season where routine is very up in the air and that players have gotten into a routine of this COVID of coming in and getting tested and all these things. And I don't believe Mahomes has had a concussion before, at least in the NFL. So like all of these protocols.
I'm sorry, I mean, I think it was Texas Tech. They at least one confirmed was at Texas Tech.
Yeah. So all of this is new. Like it's not like Brett Favre, who has had 1,000 and knows, and Ben, or like some of these guys like that have gone through concussion protocol. This is new to him. So it is going to factor in.
And I think Lone Wolf makes a good comment in the chat saying, I think Mahomes may be more affected by his toe than anything, because we saw that he was hampered by that in the game before he went out. Like you saw him kind of jogging around, maybe not the same way that we're used to. But I mean, the fact that whatever Mahomes is going to be, it's not going to be his 100%, Mike. I mean, how much does that come into play in terms of just getting ready for a guy like him and knowing he won't be his full capacity 100%?
I think, you've mentioned the toe. I think the toe could impact him. I think the rest of it, he's going to be fine. Yeah. I mean, I think he's going to be Mahomes. He's Mahomes. By the way, this one, I want to put a comment up here from Carmen. Would Andy jump through all these hoops not to not play Mahomes? I know he meant Mahomes there. I don't want to see Andy jump through anything. Seriously.
I don't know if he could. Can I just say, after the press conference on Sunday, post game, we listened to his press conference and he was straight up out of breath. I was a little concerned for him.
But that's the way. Okay. Wait, we didn't play. No, I played it for you beforehand. Here's Andy talking about Mahomes, and he always goes. He does that all the time. Here we go.
Today is a little bit limited practice, so this fit right into what he could do, but he took all the snaps, and he feels good. So I mean, we're just going to follow this protocol as close as we possibly can.
Time's yours.
I always want to get to another comment here because I think this is an interesting one. Steve English saying, why am I less nervous for this one than the Ravens? And I think that's a very interesting point. And Steve, I think it's because you're kind of playing with house money now. Like this was the game you were supposed to get to. Like this were the expectations that you were supposed to take on the Chiefs, that you were supposed to beat the Ravens. You were supposed to beat the Colts. You were a good team, Josh Allen, all of these things. And you did. There was no letdown in the playoffs. Like all of those things are true. You are now, the Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champs. They have been here. This is their third time in a row. Like all of these things that this is again, a step in the right direction where they didn't fall short. And I think to get over the hump of winning a playoff game, to beat the Ravens when the national media really didn't think in their eyes, didn't think they had a chance. It's an interesting dynamic where I feel like this is, not to say that even if they lose, it's still a very successful season. I think that's how you kind of approach this game as you're playing with house money, which you very well could win this game.
Dan, you said the national media. I think somebody wasn't watching our podcast because Matt says, which one of you picked Baltimore?
None of us.
None of us. Wait, Matt, did our Baltimore correspondent Bruce?
No, he said 20-17, and he said, "I don't know."
He didn't pick a team.
Yeah, I don't know.
He didn't pick a team. That's right. He said it was going to be, that score is going to be close no matter what. So, no, we all picked the Bills to win. We picked them to win, and preseason, I have them to this game. Jenna, you have them winning and going to the Super Bowl, right? This is your picks from the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So I do, and it's crazy that we're here now because I feel like I was kind of like, they seem to be playing really
well. Super Bowl.
It's so much more stressful going through the playoffs in terms of that Colts game and the Ravens game. But no, I had them getting to this point, and I think it's because when you look at the AFC, while there's so many talented teams out there, we saw the Ravens and the Colts and other teams like that. But I think that this Bills team has just progressed so much, even from when they played against the Chiefs earlier this season. The Bills have gone 11-1 since then. And I feel like you've really seen Josh Allen come alive. I mean, Stephon Diggs is a first-team All-Pro player. Like when you have the caliber of guys like that, Brian Dable has been influential. And I feel like at that point in the season, Josh had kind of been dealing with that shoulder injury. Matt Milano had been out. And I felt like they were trying to run the ball maybe more. And I feel like they kind of, after that game, went back to what was working. Hear me out, Dan. They went back to what they figured out was what made their offense go, and that was the run. I'm not saying they're going to do that this week. I'm just saying that I felt like earlier on in the season, they tried to be more balanced with rushing the ball. And I feel like now it's been all about the passing game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Brian Dable has called like 3 run plays and punted like 3 times this year. And I think Kansas City was one of those games. He did it against the Colts, which made my head almost explode. But I think you're right, Jen. I think they did try to establish this ground game more. And it was one of the first games I think that Zach Moss was back after his toe injury that he had earlier in the year. Yeah. So it's a different dynamic. I think that's great points. You talk about the difference between Matt Milano and, dumb stats. I know everybody talks about my dumb stat the other day about Josh Allen as an underdog of a touchdown or less. Is 13-1-4. Yeah. 13-1-4. He's really good. The Bills haven't lost with Matt Milano on the field. Matt Milano reads my Twitter account, so we know that I can motivate him. So yeah, this is an interesting game because I feel like neither team has played their best game in the playoffs yet. And I know the Chiefs only played 1, but the Bills have really shown in this last week what a complete team win. And that's Sean McDermott. That's complementary football. It's what he always talks about. But for the offense to kind of be sputtering, this defense has really picked up and made plays. Yeah. So that's why another reason why people think, wow, why am I confident this week? Because the Bills defense has looked really good over the last 8 games.
Dan, I'm not saying this to trigger you, because I know it's pretty easy when I mention the run game.
That's a triggering statement.
But look at the 4 teams that are in the Final Four. They can run the ball. Kansas City, not as much, but they've had some injuries too. Certainly Tampa can run it. And, we know Green Bay can run it, and they throw it so effectively. I will tell you this. In the offseason going into next year, the Bills are going to want to be better at the run game. I can guarantee you they will want to do that because there are games, there are moments when you're down a player or 2, you need a little more. They're not going to be a running team. All 4 of these teams are passing teams, but 3 of them can run it more effectively than the Bills can. And yes, they are down Zach Moss. It is nice to have both guys every once in a while, even if they're not doing great. One of them breaks a run, makes a play, gets in the end zone, all those things. And Josh makes up for some of that because he can run. But I think it is something they will work on for next year. By the way.
Oh, thank you, Donna. Very sweet. Appreciate that.
That's your burner account?
I wanted to get to a couple comments because what'd you say? I don't care. I wanted to get to a couple comments. One from Matt Byington. He says, I hate that we are one-dimensional. So, Mike, I feel like that kind of touches on what your point is saying. And in the offseason, trying to make it so that you can rely a little bit more on the run. Not saying that you're going to be a run offense for this Bills team, and then there's this, I couldn't pass this up. Paul Dimitriopoulos saying Bills versus Brady would be biblical.
Oh.
I just felt like that comment needed to be read aloud.
Well, it would be something. The greatest season in Bills history after 20 years of Brady torturing them.
Yeah.
And then you get to the Super Bowl and he's standing there waiting for you.
Could you imagine?
With his facelift.
His young face.
Or whatever. Yeah. Whatever.
It's interesting. Because again, it obviously I have been so against the run all season long with what I've seen out of Josh Allen and the way that he's performed. 115 saying, should the Bills consider signing Mark Ingram? I tweeted that out yesterday. I think that would be a beautiful fit just to be a little bit more of a complementary, to actually have that more of a power back and a guy that seems to have a great character, all of those things. Again, that's down the road. Nobody that the Bills are signing is going to have any effect on the next 3 weeks of the season.
But they did sign now I'm drawing
Devontae Freeman.
Devontae Freeman. So you do have a veteran back. I don't think Devontae Freeman's going to be activated for this week. But if you win the game, they have been smart. They have been proactive on that. They didn't feel like they needed it last week because, to your point, Dan, they just came out and said, what's a run? We're just going to throw it on every down.
And that's it. And that's the confidence that Brian Dable said that, I know it's when Josh was drafted, you got to have the guy that can throw in the weather and the elements, and Buffalo is so windy, like they play in a snow globe in Buffalo every single game. But Josh did play, they were not shy. And Brian Dable said that we have all the faith in the world and all the trust that it doesn't matter what it's like out there, the elements, we got a guy that we trust can spin it through the wind. And they weren't afraid to do it at all against the Ravens. So I don't think they back off at all. I think this will be a quick adjustment game. I think this game turns out to be who throws the first punch, whether it's the Chiefs taking a deep shot to get Tyreek Hill over the top, whether it's the Bills trying to get John Brown a deep over the top, and then it becomes that mix and match game, Jenna, of, okay, when can we take things underneath? Where's the missed tackle that springs a 3-yard gain into a 20-yard gain? Things like that that will decide this game early on.
It's going to be that, and it's going to be turnovers. It's going to be whoever makes that first glaring mistake, and I think that will change the momentum. We saw it even against the Ravens. Kansas City Plus doesn't have the same ring to it, just saying.
Come on, Tom. We're just giving a little insight. Yeah. You do know they are playing. I think he's joking, but they are playing the Chiefs, so we want to know what's going on.
But no, I think and we've seen those instances where Josh has had some struggles in terms of holding on to the ball. A couple fumbles, obviously recovered by the Bills. Yeah, which that's
by their offensive line.
Bills fans. Yeah. But I think of, that play by Taron Johnson, that pick 6, and him taking that back. Like, that was the game-changing play of that game. And against the Ravens, it turned out to be kind of the ceiling for the game. And so seeing that's something that definitely is out there.
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves. The offense wasn't good last week. And if they play anywhere close to that, and I know the Chiefs defense maybe isn't what the Ravens are, but if they play close to that, they're losing. Like, you're not winning the game playing as ineffectively as they did. Yes, I know it was windy. Yes, I know Cole Beasley didn't look on it. All those things are fine. But you got to score more than they did. Allen was off in the game. They didn't have another gear offensively. They were terrible on third down. Yeah. I mean, we saw way more Bjorquez than we're used to seeing. And they got bailed out by Taron Johnson in the defense. Absolutely. But that happens sometimes,
Right.
And I think that's where you see the hope too, because going back to that Colts game, the Bills defense really struggled in that one. It was the offense carrying the way. And so to have the offense 1 week pick up the team and then the defense in another week pick up the team, there is that potential to see a more complete game. Now, will we actually see that? We don't know yet, but still.
But Mike makes a good point of just the fact that the offense hasn't been playing well. And for as good as the Ravens rushing game is, this is a quarterback-driven league, and the quarterback needs to make plays to win games. That's why it's no surprise the 4 quarterbacks are remaining are really good quarterbacks. Like this, Mike, to your point of all these teams can. I don't know why I gave you an impression.
Were you just mocking Mike?
I don't know why I started to mock you.
Wait a minute, you started to sound like who were you doing? You started to go on the Romo trail. This is what you're talking about.
I don't know, Jim. I don't know, but like the fact of you say these guys all these teams can run the ball. Yeah, but none of them are here because they run the ball. All of these quarterbacks have carried this team to this point, Mike.
I know. What I'm saying is, I think they wish they had an effective running game to be effective, 20% of the offense, right? Yes. Maybe not. You don't need to, go back and forth, but to make some plays. Kansas City can run it. Kansas City ran it in that first half. Kansas City was so efficient in that first half. I know it's Cleveland's defense, but 20 plays and 11 first downs. I mean, they were mixing it up. They got everybody going. Right. Now that'll be something to watch. If Mahomes is obviously coming off of this, how does Reed handle the offense early? Does he get the running game going? Because Andy Reid's way has been pass it, get the lead, put pressure on the other team. And last week they were a little more passive and they still moved the ball.
Yeah, and obviously.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, like to your point of there is no way the Chiefs are held to 3 points. Like even with Chad Henne. Yeah. There's no way that 17 points wins this game. It doesn't matter how it happens. And I asked Josh Allen about that today because everybody talks about it's Mahomes and Allen. And whenever you ask Josh about facing Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson, he goes, well, I don't face him. And he's right. He doesn't deal with the offense. But he did explain to me today that it is a concern that when you face this Chiefs offense, it puts pressure on your offense. It's like what I've been saying about the Bills offense can do to opposing offenses these last 2 weeks. Yeah. Your best defense can be a good offense. And that that the Chiefs put so much pressure on you to score because it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Travis Kelce, it's Tyreek Hill. All of those guys are on the other side of the ball where 17 points is not going to get the job done this week.
Yeah.
And Josh Allen kind of said, like, yeah, I've watched this team. Like, I've watched them on Sunday nights and Monday nights when, like, I've been home, and it's like, yeah, they're really good at putting up points. And it's like, yeah, Josh knows, and a couple of people, like the comment I was talking about, Charity saying need 4 touchdown game from Josh Allen. You might. You really might. And when Trey White was asked about all of these things, oh, Mike.
I saw that comment and I literally knew
that was
not going to use that.
That was not. I didn't mean to hit that button. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's that point that, like, you are going to need to score points in this game. You are going to need to kind of keep the other offense on their toes compared to before. And Trey White said too, this offense is so explosive. There is no way they're going to shut them down for 60 minutes. But what I like what Trey White said was we have a mature team. We have a resilient defense that even when they get their plays, it's not going to rattle us. And he goes, when 60 minutes are up, we like where we're going to be at the end. And I think that's such a telling thing, because I was saying that about Lamar last week. It wasn't about shutting Lamar down. It was limiting his plays where you go, wow, Lamar is really good. You need to limit those plays where Allen is running, or where Mahomes is running one way and looks one way and throws another, and Kelce jumps over a guy and you go, whoa. That's got to be limited.
Yeah. I think back to even the first drive from the Ravens in that game against Baltimore last week. Like, the Bills defense was getting gashed. It was scary. Obviously, Justin Tucker missed that first field goal, but it was like, whoa, was this going to be a blowout? Is this all about Lamar? Are the Ravens just going to roll through the Bills? But it was that early on in terms of them settling in. And then obviously once they did, it was only a field goal that they did allow to be scored. So I think sometimes it's like what Trey White was saying, over that 60 minutes, they're going to see where they're at, and they are very confident in where they are. But they did, and Trey was saying, he's like, look, it's just about lightening the load of, like, what they do really well. Yeah. Like, limiting the damage is a phrase that I heard quite a bit today, and I think it's pretty accurate because what?
No, a comment.
Oh, does Dan talk more than others, or is that just a man? I mean, it's hard to get a word in edgewise between Mike and Dan.
So. I'm not saying a word. Hey, Jim.
I don't know, Jim. I don't know who talks more. I don't know, Jim.
I don't know. Okay, wait. There was one thing else I wanted to say. 2 things. One thing, hi, Charity. I saw your comment. Hello. 2, I did want to talk about the fact that this is a more experienced Chiefs team. And a piece of that is also going to be, this is the first time, this is the biggest away crowd the Bills will be in front of since Houston last year. There's 17,000 fans expected at Arrowhead. There might be 2 Bills fans, if that, in the stadium. It's going to be loud. The last time they played in front of a crowd that was nearly as loud was Houston. Mike, how much does that play into preparing for this game? Because it's enough. You control what you can control. Can't really control the crowd.
No, you can't. But I do think what happened in that game last year, and Dan will remember this, is that they played that first half. The Bills had shut it down against, the Texans were doing nothing. And then the second half started, and all of a sudden they got going, and then the crowd lit up. And I think it wasn't why the Bills started to play poorly, but it started to come around, and then you really felt it. So I will say, even though this is a much better, much more mature team, a team that's been through a ton this year, and I think they're more prepared for it, I do think having that experience, even though it being a bad one, will absolutely help them when they take the field, because they know, even though it's been a year, they know how impactful it was. That fourth quarter of that game, Josh was lost.
Mashing
He fought back, and he did get him to overtime, and I give him credit. And if it wasn't for a bad call, maybe they could have won the game. But they did fall apart in that second half. And I do think the crowd and the energy of the Texans impacted them. They have to be ready for that.
Well, Jenna, you asked McDermott about that today, right?
I did, and he was in full game day mode, very locked in McDermott. But he said basically he relies on the experience of his staff. And I wrote down, dang it, I don't have my notes next to me. I think it's 8. Yeah.
Gable's had 8, McDermott's had 6, Frazier's had 4. 18.
18. Okay. He was saying how he relies on that 18 years of combined experience to get his guys ready, which that makes sense. And I also asked the same question to Cole Beasley, talking about, how do you prepare? And he said to him, it honestly gets him juiced up. Like, he's excited to be out there with the crowd. And then he says once the game starts, it's like that all fades away. And I asked, how do you prepare a guy like Gabe Davis, who has not played in an NFL, like in front of an NFL crowd? And he said, a lot of guys, it doesn't factor in because of just have so much to focus on that sometimes you can sometimes hear the crowd, but most of the time you're just so locked in. And it's not like a lineman or a quarterback where, you're waiting for the snap count or something like that. Like, you can just run.
It does depend on the player. Some of the guys have played in some big time college places, but college crowds are usually, I have to say, it's usually not as loud as it is in an NFL. It's more enthusiastic, but it's not as, quote, loud, because NFL crowds usually at this point, it gets into the playoffs. I was thinking about that. So I don't know what Dable's record is with his teams, but it's got to be pretty strong. The Patriots, I think, lost maybe one of those games or 2. I'd have to look at it. And McDermott, I believe, lost his first 3 with the Eagles. Then he won his 4th. Then he won in Carolina. So this will be his 6th, right?
I thought I saw that.
No. He won the 4th with the Eagles. Then they lost out in Arizona. He was still with the Eagles then. Then he won in Carolina. So he's won 2 of his last 3. So there you go.
So it's interesting too, because I asked Josh about dealing with the crowd and dealing with the noise. And like I said, Jenna, we kind of talked about it earlier this week in the podcast. Like, this isn't, I would assume to some respects, it's like riding a bike, with the fact of like, they're not going to be surprised by this, but it has been a long time. And Josh was very frank about his answer about dealing with the 17,000 fans that will be there. And he kind of said, we're going to have to make an adjustment once the game starts. He's like, we're preparing for it. Like, we're preparing for I'm sure, to go silent counts and all of those things. But it is going to be a whole different monster. He said he's never played at Arrowhead, and he said that from everything he's talked to, that Arrowhead, the fans are like right on top of it.
They are.
So it's an interesting dynamic for Josh to even be honest, to be like, we're preparing. But it's kind of like what I said the other day, is that there's no simulating what Arrowhead crowd is going to be like. Exactly. And especially for the Bills, who know what 6,700 fans can be like,
right?
To know what 17,000 fans, and yes, Bills Mafia, you guys are incredible. You guys were the loudest crowd, all of those things. Arrowhead's also very loud. Like, it's not like these aren't Cowboy fans. Like, these are real.
That's usually me who takes a shot at the Cowboys fans.
These aren't people in.
This is more like Steelers fans.
Yes. These are real fans. So it is going to be interesting. And Josh talked about how to handle these things and handling his first game. And he said, we got to pretend like we can't make this game bigger than it already is. And he did say that Ken Dorsey's been a part of games like this because he was with Carolina. And he said, Brian Dable, he goes, Dable's showed him his notes from the previous 8 AFC Championship games, which is pretty cool when you think about Dable keeping on his notebook.
Yeah.
And he said it. And then Josh kind of added to, he goes, think about the guys that he's talked to during those games. It's like, it's not Curly, Larry, and Mo. It's Tom Brady. It's these guys that have won a lot of games, and the wisdom that Brady has imparted into Dable.
Yeah. You two continue on. I have an appointment. I need to get my COVID test. I'll be heading out to Kansas City, and the test is scheduled tonight. And if I don't get moving, well, then I won't get the test. So you keep going. Dan, talk away.
Good night, Dad.
All right, kids, make sure you turn everything off.
We have money. We have some money for dinner.
I ordered a pizza. Keep going.
Classic. All right. Yeah. Like Mike said, he's getting his COVID test because he's heading out to Kansas City later on this week. So Dan, I had something to add because I talked to someone who covers the Chiefs, and I thought it was interesting because I asked about, this is a team that, in terms of the Chiefs, has been not really doing great in terms of, yes, they've been winning, they've had all those things, but like in terms of the games, they've looked sloppy, they haven't looked put together. And I asked him, is there any concern coming into this game that they haven't been playing their best ball? And the response was, and this was something that I think sometimes we tend to forget, myself included, is that going up the Chiefs all season long because they're defending champs, they get everyone's best. They are always a team that has a target on their back. You don't agree with that?
No. I think that that's more high school, college.
Oh, I totally disagree with that. You also don't believe in a trap game, so I can't trust you.
Correct. I just don't think that they're like we have a bullseye on our back now and like all this stuff. It's like I just don't. They're the Chiefs. They were good. They have Patrick Mahomes. Everybody wants to beat Patrick Mahomes, but it's not because. No. Especially when I feel like they have coasted through this season. And it's kind of like when you see like the LA Dodgers or like a really good baseball team where you're like, they're going to be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of can they flip the switch? LeBron James in the regular season. Does Portland get fired up to beat the Lakers in February? I don't know.
There's so many games. We're talking about 16 game regular season. It's so different.
I'm talking about a regular season game on a Sunday in week 8.
Yeah.
I don't think Jacksonville gets, this is the time we're going to make a stand and show we're a really good team. It's like Kansas City will beat you one hand tied behind their back.
I don't agree with that. I think the mindset is, and these guys are so competitive in the NFL that like they want to take down. Like I think there is a target on your back when you have won the Super Bowl. I really do. So I was like, okay, that makes sense in the fact that maybe they've been struggling because of that reason. But you mentioned a good point. Like, how hard is it to flip the switch? Okay, wait. I want to highlight this comment.
No, you can't.
Makes sense, Jenna. You're right. Nope. Dan is wrong.
Yeah, see, I'm the only one that can highlight. Mike and I have the admin power, but you can't. I can't highlight that question.
Read it aloud. Thank you, Ryan, as well. Thank you.
So it's interesting dynamic that I just think that, obviously the Chiefs not, resting their starters in week 17, and then obviously going on with this one, having the bye week, it's different. Now I think that the Chiefs can flip the switch at any time. They were down to Miami late in the season and scored 35 unanswered points when everybody was like, oh, Miami's going to knock off the Chiefs. And for a second, Bills fans thought they could have the number 1 seed.
Yeah,
they are this good that they can play bad for 3 to 4 possessions. They can play a bad quarter, and then all of a sudden they still have Patrick Mahomes. That's the bottom line. So it's an interesting dynamic. I just think that Mahomes' week will be altered. So I think that does factor into it and how to handle this week.
Yeah, I guess my question is with Mahomes' injury. How injured he is, how much that plays a part in that switch flipping capabilities.
Well, I think it's interesting because he doesn't need to be great to have this offense score points. Like
that's a very good point. Yeah,
like he can be a game manager because he's not going to need to thread the needle to Travis Kelce every time. Like last year or the year before. It was interesting how many open throws Patrick Mahomes had. Like, it wasn't like he was throwing these incredible back shoulder balls. He was throwing to Tyreek Hill, who nobody was guarding him in the frame because of what Andy Reid can draw up. Yeah. It's Andy Reid's scheme. It's Eric Bieniemy. It's those guys are so good that's why I think the Bills respect so much that even though it's not going to happen, if it was Chad Henne, they would still have to be super focused because of what Tyreek Hill brings, what McCole Hardman brings, what Travis Kelce and the mismatches and all of those things that like what Mahomes is doing is so impressive is partly because of how good Andy Reid and him in the system is. I'm not saying Mahomes is a system quarterback. I'm just saying he's given so many great opportunities and schemes in the system.
No, I think that's very fair. Okay. I'm just curious. We have some questions rolling in. Dan Walker saying, is Kelce the best tight end? I would say so. I would just think with his size and his speed and his physicality and just how, Dan, he's just so dependable.
Yeah, and he's like Cole Beasley and LeBron James' body. Like him and Mahomes are just on another level where it's so incredible to watch them play where Kelsey's supposed to run some route and he changes it because of the defense running a zone or man. And Mahomes knows what he's going to do in that thing, in that route. That is what's so impressive. It's the same thing Bills fans have seen when Josh and Cole are on the same level and the same frequency. That's the kind of level that they're at. And then you add in the fact that Kelsey's 6'6" and as fast as a wide receiver. And I know some people were commenting earlier, is Edmonds going to guard him? What do you think they do? If Tremaine Edmonds is guarding Travis Kelce, it's a massive mismatch, and Kelce will feast in this game. I said earlier in the week, Matt Milano will give him the best chance. Even Matt Milano doesn't have the size to hang with Kelce.
Which is crazy because you see Matt Milano and you're like, wow, dude's a beast.
Yeah. Now, Matt Milano's had the ability to guard Cooper Kupp out of the slot. Like there are very few people that agility-wise he can hang, he can't hang with. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I know somebody made a comment earlier whether they do go with Dean Marlowe, who's 6'2", who's got more of a size if they take Taron Johnson off the field.
But isn't it hard to take Taron off just after the game he
absolutely had? But it's picking your poison. Like that's the thing, is that's what we criticized Sean McDermott for so much the last time these two teams played, where we went, Sean, they're running the ball 10 yards a pop. What are you doing? And he's like, I had to choose one. Like, I wasn't going to let Mahomes beat me. And he didn't. Mahomes was 21 of 26 for 225 and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran for 186 yards. Even Mahomes. That's an interesting dynamic, Jenna. Mahomes is sneaky athletic. Like, he sneakily gets he led the league.
Do you think it's sneaky though?
Yeah, because you don't think of Patrick Mahomes as running.
I do. I mean, not like I think of him escaping the pocket.
Yes, but Patrick Mahomes led the league in quarterback runs on third down that got first downs. So, like, he also has 3 consecutive playoff games with a rushing touchdown. Like, it's a part of the game plan. If his toe, his foot, the way that he was gimping around wasn't good, and that could take some of that away, which is why I think a lot of people are talking about the concussion. And Mike was saying the concussion's not much of it as an issue as the foot is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I guess we'll see. Hey, we want to remind everyone in the chat that tomorrow is our big show. We have it at 7:00. You can watch it on Fox Rochester if you live in the Rochester area. You can also watch it on YouTube as well as on Facebook Live. It'll be at 7:00. And we'll be in studio, so it'll be a little bit different, but you'll hear more from the players as well. And if you guys have any questions you want us to cover in the show, be sure to send them into the chat right now, because we'd love to hear what everyone's thinking about. Dan, anything you want to add before I wrap up?
Well, we did the show like this today. We have our in-studio show on Thursday. We're going to do another show like this on Friday night, probably around the same time, 7:30. We'll have a sports reporter, and anchor in from Kansas City. She will provide some insight. Maybe even by that point, we will know if Mahomes has cleared concussion protocol. As well as Saturday, Mike will be in Kansas City, and we will do another one of these. So if you are bored and just can't get enough of the Buffalo Plus sports team, every night at 7:00, around 7:00, I put my daughter to bed around 7, so sometimes it's like 7:30. We can take care of this.
Yes, we'll have plenty more content. Please be sure to subscribe and like. We're trying to get to 5,000. We will get there. Oh, thank you, 115. We appreciate it. I saw someone, I think it was Paul, said, enjoy the fancy show, talking about the show in studio. So we appreciate that as well. Love the fancy Thursday shows. We are healthy in this game. That's a huge point. Yeah. We can talk more about that tomorrow, but that is definitely something that stands out.
Josh too. Josh wasn't healthy that game.
Josh was not. Milano wasn't healthy that game.
Edmonds wasn't healthy that game.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to wrap it up because Thomas Burke's comment, I didn't like it. He said, hey, Dan, you're always right.
See, now, Jenna, I get the ability to highlight the comments. So that one gets highlighted.
Annoying. So annoying. All right. We appreciate everyone watching us on here. We'll be back tomorrow night and Friday night and Saturday night and probably Sunday if I had to imagine. So thanks for checking out. Mike Catalana is getting his COVID test for Dan Fetes. I'm Jenna Cottrell. We will see you tomorrow at 7:00. 7:00.